We are having some challenges with the phone, aren't we?
I know. I'm sorry. It may be something on my end. I'm working from home today because I'm leaving in about an hour for D.C., but hopefully third time is the charm.
Okay. And I'm disregarding my headset because maybe, let's eliminate any contingent issues. I have you on my handheld.
Potential problems, and I'm going to sit in one spot and make sure I don't move. So, well, I only have about 40 minutes because I have to run to my train, so I want to make sure we have time for our conversation. I believe what we had talked about last time is that our interview would focus on your compliance champions part of and culture keepers part of your program. Does that still make sense for you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think why don't we just start with you telling me sort of generally about what you mean by culture keepers and how you utilize that in your compliance program.
So I've asked my compliance and ethics analyst to really have 4 pillars that guide the compliance and ethics program. They are rebranding. 2 is revise, refine. So think of any current policies, making sure they're not too legalese, but to be very business-centric. Same with the rebranding. At times, compliance and ethics oftentimes may roll up into the legal team. As such, our lawyers really as business-focused as they need to be, given that that's their key stakeholder group. So we are really I'm really, managing and refocusing the program to ensure that we really look at our end users and customize the content, the tone to really resonate with our large stakeholder group, which is the business. Then third is reinforcement. So throughout the year, what are we doing to reinforce the training that we've provided, the reminders in terms of what the focus of the as culture keepers. So could they be emails, 3-minute video vignettes, and then lastly ROI, measuring impact at the end of each year. Did we actually teach the tribe? So we call our team members tribe members. Did we actually teach the tribe something that resonated with them, that stuck, that actually is now going to guide behavior going forward? That's the whole point of training. Otherwise, to me, the training has fallen short of the desired outcome, which is to guide behavior. So, those are the 4 pillars. So in terms of the rebranding, Culture Keepers really is, meant to be the tone through which our program, manages all things, kind of keeping that culture-minded focus as the top priority. So we're not here to, catch people doing things wrong. We as a compliance and ethics team are here to really support tribe members, to get an A, to be successful, to try and avoid missteps because they're now educated on what the missteps could be. Oftentimes maybe in the example of, say, a gift, if you're, or, especially with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, a government official could be a wholly owned entity, by a particular government. So it may not be obvious to the tribe member that they're actually working with a government official. So taking that official out to lunch, number one, they may not know they're a government official. Number two, anything of value. What does anything of value really mean? So in the absence of really educating with real-life examples that, tribe members actually understand, it's not so academic, they're not going to be educated so that they can avoid a misstep, which would then be problematic not just to them but to the organization. So, for me, Culture Keepers also is, we have such a great culture. We have 6 corporate values that really guide all tribe members' behavior. And our number one corporate value is doing the right thing. Our second value, we value creating positive, lasting memories in all our relationships. And I can email these to you, Nicole, if you that
would be very helpful.
Okay, our third is, we value making it better than it is today. So it's always, looking at ways we can improve process, policy. We value succeeding as a tribe while excelling as individuals. So we really emphasize team-mindedness, doing it together. None of us is as great as all of us. We value owning it, passionately acting on it. So we really, if there's an issue, take action. And lastly, sustaining the WD4 company economy. So, in what way can we view ourselves as owners of the company so that we really, manage our respective scope of work with our corporate economy in mind. So those values, really have set the tone and really guide behavior for our organization. So in that aspect, the culture keeper mindset really is just an extension of that philosophy, but being much more intentional within what way that philosophy resonates into the compliance and ethics program. So, I think at the end of the day, how do people thrive? They thrive because, in terms of emotional needs, do they feel accepted? Do they feel respected? Do they feel they're in an environment where others assume best intentions? So, that's the focus in terms of kind of the heart of our compliance and ethics program. We want to build, continue to strengthen our tribe. We already have a really great, strong tribe, but continuing to build trust among colleagues, that if there is a breakdown in communication, there's no triangulation. People feel safe enough that they can speak directly, openly, and honestly to that tribe member before escalating it to a supervisor, because there's enough peer trust, there's enough in that collegial trust bucket where they feel they can have that direct dialogue. So that's an example of, continuing to keep our culture strong is just, we're culture keepers. We're not, we're like the police trying to go throughout the tribe and catch people doing things wrong. So, and I think, ways in which we are, providing the training going forward is moving away from an old style of really, heavy legalese, heavy on the PowerPoint slides, a body in the front of the room, talking at people, more to an online, 1 hour, possibly using humor, but certainly using relevant scenarios, and then really having a 5-year strategy plan. So we've really done a risk assessment of all of the various corporate policies that we have and said, okay, if we were to heat map this, where's the biggest risk? And then, what would be the biggest risk in terms of, it could be one event, but significant impact to the business. And we pretty much put it on an XY axis and said, okay, for those risks that are high risk, we may need to hit that content once a year. For those that are maybe lower risk, we hit that content every 3 years. So, we're really getting much more strategic and more intentional with when we're going to have training. So we took a step back and said, when do we think the tribe globally will be less, more able to focus on training so that the content, the learning could stick? So we've now identified particular months in the spring and early fall where we will now be annually deploying training, whereas I think in the past it may not have been as predictable. So again, for planning purposes, continuity of content, getting really clear as far as a timeline. What is the content timeline? Not just scheduling the training, and then we have an ethics committee. We have an ethics committee comprised of all of our global leaders. So really, getting much more intentional with that group. Well, what does that mean? I mean, is it just check a box? You've got a committee. So now we've done a charter. We have a work plan. We're meeting, twice a year face to face, where we discuss, what have been some learning moments that would be beneficial for all of the trading blocks, because WD-40 is comprised of 3 distinct trading blocks. We have EMEA, Americas, which is Canada, U.S., Latin America, and then Asia Pacific. And so those key leaders there are core members of our ethics committee, and then we have regional compliance officers. But really getting with that core group and saying, what have been some learning moments? So WD-40, we're all about learning moments. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Gary Ridge always says that, and I think that's spot on. So that we can, have meaningful dialogue as a group to share the learning with other trading blocks. And so, and then we've got, the regional compliance officers, which we will be engaging more this coming year, to really ensure we're operationalizing our Culture Keeper message. I think sometimes organizations fall a bit short by not cascading the learning down to, middle level management, which, is really the heart of the house, if you will, and helping them be an extension of that effort and that opportunity and that dialogue, because that's really, that's where most of the tribe members will be engaging, is in that lower level, middle level management, if you will.
So is the Culture Keeper message that everyone at WD-40 is a Culture Keeper, or that the people in the compliance department are the Culture Keepers, or is it both those things? How does that messaging work?
Yeah, no, I think in terms of our messaging, we may be helping brand the message, but at the end of the day, we're all Culture Keepers. So our number 2 corporate value, 1 and 2, doing the right thing, and the second is creating positive, lasting memories in all our relationships. So
so is that? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, so we're all stewards of our corporate values. At the end of the day, it's on us to demonstrate those values on a daily basis. And, at the end of each, so our fiscal year is September 1. It starts on, 9/1 each year. So it's a little different than some companies. But at the end of each fiscal year, we have our annual performance review. But each quarter, we sit down with our coach, so we call our bosses coaches. And part of your performance review is each quarter, how did you show up as it relates to the 6 corporate values? You have to give an actual example of how you demonstrated all 6 of our corporate values over the course of the 12 months. So that's another way that the organization really demonstrates an expectation that people really, act on these values. It's not just, something on the wall, that they really have to demonstrate them.
That makes a lot of sense. And so then you've talked about rebranding the compliance department, which is interesting because that's something that Gwen talks about too, using that exact language. So it's clearly something people are thinking about. What has that looked like for you in practice? Are you sending emails? Are you just referring to the compliance department differently? Are you using this Culture Keeper language publicly? How has that looked for you guys?
Yeah, so we are really just now embarking on the journey. So I switched to the tribe about, January of 17. So we're starting to build that messaging. We've brought on a third-party global content provider that can really help us deploy training online. That's a first for us. Typically it's been someone in the front of the room reading a PowerPoint, sharing that content, and then giving the content to global leaders to then share with their respective tribe members. So us shifting to an online modality is brand new for the tribe. And then, this is really my vision. And, so far it's been really well received. I think the business always loves to hear when legal, because compliance rolls up into legal, is business-centric and takes the business into consideration when they're rolling out programmatic, content in terms of what is the substance, what's the form, and what's the timing. I think all too often, those that may be responsible for compliance and may not be as aware of what's going on with the business. And I think when you take the time to care about what is going on with the business and be mindful of that when you roll out training, I think goes a long way in terms of buy-in with your business partners. But we're thinking of potentially using fun logos, video vignettes, comedy. There's a lot to be said if you can use a very real example, but not to make light of a scenario, but to present it in a way that it will stick. But we really are just we're embarking on a new journey here, and I think it's an exciting time, I think, for the compliance and ethics program. I think it's been pretty dry up to this point.
And what inspired that sort of shift? What inspired this new journey?
Well, I'm new, and I come from I was corporate counsel for the Kim Blanchard companies for almost 12 years. So I look at leadership. You're an influencer, and you can influence through fear. You can influence through positivity and inspiration, and that's kind of where that's where my leadership point of view falls. Is really being of service to others, really influencing them so that they want to be the best versions of themselves. And if you use compliance with a fear-based mindset, you may get it's almost coercive to some degree. You may be getting the people may be going. Are you that's not you? Okay. It seems almost oppressive. You're kind of forcing it on people rather than bringing them along. And I think when you come from a place of we're here to help you win, I think that to me that builds the much more buy-in because it's meaningful, it's inspiring, it's positive. You're not coming down and utilizing fear to force people to do what you're asking them to do. Well, you're going to break, you're breaking the law. Well, at the end of the day, compliance isn't just about, no bribery. For me, compliance means, being a respectful, inclusive, collaborative tribe member. Compliance for me is it's just more meaningful than just, don't break the law and here's the laws you shouldn't break.
Yeah.
Due diligence, know your third party. Are they in alignment with our corporate values? It's deeper for me in terms of how I view compliance and how I'm managing this program.
And tell me more about the shift to online training. What is the reasoning behind that process?
Yeah, I think people just, especially in today's day and age, if they can take something online that may be shorter but get to the point quicker, maybe there's less words, but there's more meaning in the content. And I think online is just more appropriate, certainly for our tribe. We're so global. We have offices. We have 6 branch offices in continental Europe. We have one in the UK, Shanghai, Malaysia. We're just a really spread out tribe. And for me too, just having consistency of content deployment. So, every facilitator has a different style. And when you're up in the front of the room just reading from a PowerPoint, so to some degree, is there continuity of style as it relates to deployment? And then probably not. What some facilitators are highly engaging, others aren't. So for me, moving to online gives me a greater sense of confidence that the content is being deployed in a consistent, engaging, compelling way. And, utilizing a third-party content provider so they're global. We're trying to make sure we are global-minded when we think of training. So for a small example, GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation is coming out May 25. I don't look at that as an EMEA data privacy law. We are now looking at that as a global data privacy standard there may be some nuances unique to Europe that fall under the GDPR specifically, but at the end of the day, our whole tribe needs to do a better job on handling, managing, saving private data, personal information. So again, it's doing the right thing. This is someone's personal information, whether it's an employee, a customer, third-party vendor. We want to do the right thing and have good record-keeping practices, storing it, only as long as we need to, destroying it when it's, when it's appropriate and we should, keeping it only so long as we need to. So that's another example of an extension of just our number one corporate value. It's doing the right thing. It's ensuring we have positive, lasting memories that we create with all parties. And I think for me too, culture keeper is also really inclusion, Nicole. I think, especially in light of everything that's gone on with certain issues that women have faced. I mean, culture is about all of us. It's not just about women. It's not just about any segment in your employee population. It's really, we're all people. And what unites us? Well, we all want to feel, like I said earlier, respected, appreciated, that we have meaningful work. Those are, there's some psychological work that was done a long time ago, but Daniel Pink has written on this, and Susan Fowler has also written on this. But autonomy, relatedness, and connectedness, ARC. When people are at work, leave them alone. Don't micromanage them. Let them feel autonomous, that they can do what they need to do to get the work that you've hired them to do done. Relatedness. Do they have a sense that the work that you've asked them to do has a higher meaning? Because if it's just fairly meaningless work, they may not feel as inspired every day when they go to work. So give them meaningful work that actually matters. And then competency. Have you given them the tools to really be subject matter experts in their work scope? And if not, give them those opportunities. So as a manager, if you create ARC within your team, more likely than not, people are going to be inspired and motivated and excited and passionate every day at work. So for me, culture keepers is just an extension of that mindset. Do people feel safe at work? Do they feel included? Do they have meaningful work? And that is common among all people, not just women, not just other segments of your employee base. Those, to me, culture keeper is all about inclusion. So, that's to me another kind of, in terms of my spine of the way in which I view the compliance and ethics. That's kind of a core vertebra in terms of how I'm going to be holding this program up.
And so how does that play into the content of your training? We've talked about how you're going to be deploying the training, and you've talked some about using humor and using real-life scenarios. Can you tell me more about how this sort of idea of focusing on culture and values plays into specifically your anti-corruption training? How do you think that will play out? I know you're in the design phases.
Well, so I think it's more an extension of the content. So let's say, because we're now asking global leaders, are you, in terms of those learning moments, has there been a learning moment in terms of maybe a concern within your trading block about, a value that may not be demonstrated, or you're struggling with triangulation? So part of the compliance and ethics training, because we hear that, and that's important information, we then take that into consideration when we look at other training that we're going to deploy. So maybe a future training might be a trust workshop or a critical conversations workshop. So compliance and ethics isn't just about FCPA. It isn't just about, your gift policy. It's about how do people behave with each other at work. And if there's an issue, so you can create that workspace of inclusion, high trust, you may need to supplement your traditional compliance content with other content to address that issue.
That makes sense to me. So you're really taking it out from focusing on any one subject matter and making sure that someone is consistently thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah, I would say I look at it more holistically. You know, it's not just like, okay, here are the traditional compliance and ethics topics. Here's chapter 1 through 6. Okay, you covered chapter 1 through 6, job done. No, take a step back and ask more meaningful questions. You know, lift up the curtain. Are there other issues that are really eroding trust, that are really eroding inclusion? And supplement, make your training content more meaningful by getting to those issues. Because you know, at the end of the day, someone could adhere to FCPA, but is that really making your culture strong when at the end of the day people don't trust each other? You know, so for me, it just the culture at our organization is a strategic competency. You know, we take our culture incredibly seriously. We are servant leaders as a management group. You know, we care about, and people are high, and because people feel cared about, and that leaders are here, you know, to help them get an A and win. We have an incredibly strong culture. So the compliance and ethics program just needs to, you know, really be guided by that. And for me, that's why I'm taking a much more of a holistic view, trying to, you know, modernize it, make it look a little different, because, you know, Marshall Goldsmith, what got us here isn't going to get us there. So
what about your messaging? Do you have a plan to do regular messaging from the compliance department? How is that going to be a part of this new structure?
Well, so as far as communication protocols, we've adopted Vicki Halsey's. She's one of the Ken Blanchard Company's authors. She talks about it in her, you know, Hamster Revolution book. So one is just getting across the entire legal department. So under me is compliance and ethics, brand management, and material contracts. Everyone, you know, especially on the legal team, we use what's called an ABC email format: action, background, close. So, you know, one way that we are rebranding is just getting more succinct in our communication style, and then using, you know, similar, you know, after we do training in those 3 buckets, we do, and after training, hey, how'd we do? So being consistent in the way in which we solicit feedback. So just creating consistency on the legal team in terms of how we're communicating with the business. How are we soliciting feedback? That we are always soliciting feedback. So just, you know, creating, standardizing communication and, you know, practices within the team, the whole legal team. So, you know, compliance is just one thing the legal team, you know, is responsible for. But just, you know, kind of creating that consistent branding so that when you interface with legal, this is what the communication style is going to look like. They do routinely solicit feedback because you know, Ken Blanchard always says that, you know, feedback is the breakfast of champions. This is what it's going to look like. So there's more consistency, predictability, you know, highly professional, engaging, meaningful. And then I mentioned those 4 R's. Those are really the pillars for how we're managing, you know, these big buckets like compliance and ethics.
Okay, I'm just looking at I feel like we have talked about most of what I wanted to ask you about. What about the sort of nitty-gritty of the compliance department, the policies and procedures, the stuff that you have in writing? How is this plan affecting those?
So the 4 R's, you know, rebranding, which then moves right into revise, refine. We are looking at all of our policies with fresh eyes to consider, are they too legalese, and to really view them and write them in a way that is possibly easier to understand, less words, but more meaning, more to the point. And so that's how we are looking at all current policy content. And again, it's risk-based. You know, right now, with every year we'll be training on the code of conduct. code of conduct really identifies our philosophical point of view as it relates to gift data privacy. It's kind of bigger bucket. And then they reference the actual policy themselves. So this year we're focusing on data privacy as well as due diligence. So those are the two policies that we're looking at now to potentially simplify, refine. So again, it's really looking at your compliance program strategically, heat map it. What are the biggest risks, and that's where you start your focus. And then if you're just on, like we are, a journey of rebranding, you can't do it all in FY18. So you've got to be really strategic on, what do you need to hit this year? Then over time, the next, 3 to 5 years, all of those policies will have been reviewed, and, that will just be further along in that effort.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And tell me a bit more about the measuring ROI. What are your plans for that?
Well, so in the absence of asking, hey, what did you learn? Show me what you know, you can't really gauge whether your training had any impact. So one way, we will be more routinely doing is soliciting feedback after each training. What'd you learn? Give us a grade. You can't make improvements on training if you don't ask people, in what way it added impact to them. And then this is where, where we will continue to learn, how can you really measure impact of compliance training? Is that an increase in employee passion percentages? Does that mean a decrease in the number of, and so, at WD-40, it's such a highly engaged, passionate culture to begin with. We're already playing at a pretty high level in terms of employee passion and engagement. So, I'm not going to be expecting some, 10 percentile shift from a B to an A. So what can I start to look at in terms of in what way compliance training had impact? Well, one, you could say in the absence, like with FCPA gift, in the absence of those kinds of issues. So in the absence of incidences occurring like that could be one data point. Another could be, are you seeing less turnover with a particular manager or, on a particular team? So I think this is where we as compliance, professionals, legal professionals, we need to continue to be open to get smarter, to try to be better at data analytics. And all I know is the first step for us is just asking, soliciting that feedback.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, I think that I have what I need. I may have a few follow-up questions. I often do once I start actually looking at this in an article format.
Okay.
So I am traveling I'm traveling this week, and then I'm traveling a bit next week, and I'm in Europe for a full week after that. So my March is completely insane. I may be a little slow in getting this back to you, but I will definitely give you, as long as you need on your end to get things revised. And I'm hoping, depending on the time it takes me to get you a draft, to run it in April or May. And
okay,
like I had said before, get you a draft and you can make any changes on your end and have anyone else look at it if you feel like you need to, and then we can go from there.
Perfect.
And if it seems like that process is going to take a while, if you can just sort of give me a feel for that once I get you the draft, I'll plan accordingly on my end.
Yeah, and if you want to touch base by phone, if you have additional questions or you just want additional information from me, just let me know. And I will actually I'll be in the UK the week of May 1. I don't know if you'll be there, and then I'll also be back out there the week of October 15. So if you're traveling either one of those days, let me those weeks. Let me know.
I'm traveling in March to Germany, and then I'm here for a while.
Okay.
So I think as of now that's the plan.
Well,
so we only
travels,
usually do about one big trip a year one big trip abroad a year. Although I may be doing 2 this year, so we will see.
Yeah, well, if we can ever align calendars, I'll be in Seattle for INTA, the International Trademark Association, and then I'll be in Vegas in October. So you're going to be there for that, right?
Yep, I will be in Vegas in October. So if we don't connect in person before then, we will definitely grab a cup of coffee at the conference in October.
Awesome. Well,
Thank
safe
you
travels
so
to
much.
DC, friend. Stay warm.
Thank you. I
will. Okay.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Okay, you too. Bye.